Our goal today, just show of hands, who in here would identify just as more junior or mid-level in your career? Just kind of level set. That's great. That's awesome. Hey, good on you for showing up. Round of applause. Half the battle when getting into an industry is building relationships and getting things rolling. How many of y'all would say you're more on like the senior side? You've been in this space for a little bit. That's great. This is going to be a conversation. It's going to be a dialogue. The thing that I love about design that also makes it challenging is it's so subjective. You know, we try to take something that is subjective and make it as objective as possible. And so that's what we're going to do today. But unlike maybe Sanctus, there was a lot of hands-on and working and doing things. This is going to be a lot of conversation. If something strikes you and you want to raise your hand and you have a question, we'll pause and we'll take it. We'll talk through it. If you disagree with something that Chris and I said, totally fair. We want to hear your opinion on it. The nice thing about this room and this environment is that everyone here wants to see the people around them succeed. Everyone here wants to see all of y'all succeed. And I think the best thing about these community events is how we can all help each other. Creative Portfolio Workshop. Okay, before we get into introductions, because that is important, you gotta know who the heck Chris is and who the heck I am. I want y'all to noodle on something. What if you had 20% more opportunities? Like you're trying to get work. Oh, that's a good place to start, Chris. We got to figure out who in here freelances. Anyone freelancers? Yes, love it. The hustle. Who runs an agency or studio? Anyone here run an agency or studio? Nice, fantastic. Who's here because this is workshop number 2 and you're just like stoked to be here? Nice. Yes, I love that. Well, this will still be exciting. But so often I think creatives think about our portfolio as a place to just show off work. We'll just put it up there. But the reality is if you have a proactive website, if it's out there working for you and capturing new leads, it relates to a monetary value. So let's say hypothetically, maybe you get 20 opportunities a year. So if you increase that by 20%, God, we're gonna do some math here, Chris. You're talking about what, 24 opportunities. Let's say you win 50% of them. So now you went from winning 10 projects one year, now you're winning 12. It's 2 more projects. And there's a lot of freelancers in the room, so we'll use a day rate of $500. So what's that? So 2 extra projects, maybe your average booking is like 2 weeks, 5 times 5, 25, God, $5,000. So that's $10,000 you're getting extra that year. That's not bad. I would take $10,000. Over 5 years, $50,000, 10 years, $100,000, all because you did some little tweaks on your website. That's really what we're trying to get into. Adjustments you make to your website can have active ramifications on the money that you're trying to bring in. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of that stuff. Let's talk about who the heck we are. My name is Mack Garrison. You may know this because you've seen me dancing on Instagram trying to get you to buy tickets. It worked. Tell me it didn't. It worked. We really ran out of content that last week, and I was like, oh, thank God this is coming up because I can't do this. But in my role, I'm director of content at Dash. We're a high-end animation and video production agency that simplifies creative and helps connect brands to their communities. And I'm joined today by Chris Mistrick from Showit. Chris is the design community growth manager, and between the two of us, I think we've probably seen thousands of portfolio websites at this time. Let me toss it over to you, Chris, and maybe you could set the stage a little bit like, you know, what brought you here? What's your background? Why should we listen to you when we're talking about websites?
Sure, I've actually been secretly stalking Mac for about 10 years now, and I whittled my way into his life, just kidding. So I'm from Phoenix, I'm with Showit. Showit's a drag and drop website builder, and I actually started as a musician and did that for 13 years. But I was talking to Marsh earlier, the music world makes no money, and so I had to figure out other things to actually take care of my family. And so that's when I was like, hey, I think I can figure out websites. And so I started building websites for friends and then started charging, and then slowly but surely my web design freelance business ended up overtaking my music salary. It wasn't hard to do, if you're wondering. Like I doubled my income. My income was nothing. So not super impressive when you kind of get into the weeds. But then I found Showit. And it was like a match made in heaven. So I now oversee our designer community, which are folks who are like you, but just in the brand and web world. And so do a lot of content, a lot of education, a lot of coaching to help people build their businesses, build their skills. So super excited about being with you guys today.
Love it. Thanks, Chris. So a little bit of my background, also in the creative space, I was an animator. It doesn't feel like at this day and age with what I do on a day-to-day, but that's where I started. Went to College of Design at NC State University around the corner, so didn't really go very far. Shout out, whoop pat, let's go. So did that, graduated, and this was shortly after the financial crisis of 2008, and so no one was getting hired, and so I was thrust into the career of freelance without really wanting to go into freelance. So I had to figure that out for a little bit, had to work on the website there. Got lucky and got a job here locally in Raleigh with an advertising agency called Centerline Digital, where I worked for about 5 years and worked my way up from junior green creative, not really knowing what to do, to more of an art director role, where I did get to start reviewing portfolios. From there, that led me to starting Dash in 2015, God, almost 10 years, which is crazy. And in that time, hiring W-2 staff, hiring 1099s, I have reviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of portfolios at this point. I'm still surprised from time to time on what people produce, which is awesome. And yeah, so we'll get into it a little bit today. All right, first up, let's talk about your value proposition. Any guesses on like what your value proposition would be? Any thoughts? What does value proposition mean to you? How would you define it? Oh, I'm sorry, Jeff. I'm sorry, walking too far.
Basically, what you can offer somebody.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer. Anything else we can offer someone?
To me, that sounds like your essence as like an artist and like a creative
Yes.
person.
Love some good essence, 100%. I would say it's like what makes you unique. Like, why would someone choose to hire you over someone else? And that's not malicious and like we don't want other people to get hired, but it's like the reality is when people are thinking about hiring you for full-time role or for freelance, they're choosing other options. They're looking at different things. Having a good value prop helps solidify you and make you different. I don't know, Chris, would you add anything onto that from a value proposition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I think about value proposition, the best way I've heard it defined is it answers two questions. So the first question is, why should I buy or sign up for this versus any other option out there for any other type of purchase? So why should I pay you to do some motion design work for me versus taking a trip to Disney World, right? So why is this important to me? What kind of impact is it going to make on my life? And then the second question is, why should I buy or sign up from you versus anyone else just like you? So why should I choose this over anything else? And why should I choose you over anyone else? So that's where you get into like the uniqueness or the onlyness that makes you your essence, your you-ness.
So one of the things we're going to do today, and to try to help with this, is to figure out what your value proposition could or should be, but that starts with understanding yourself. And one of the ways that I have found over the years that really helps with that is doing something called a SWOT analysis. This is what you're looking at in front of you. So SWOT analysis, this is a strategic planning tool developed by Albert Humphrey, stellar name, 1960s and 70s. Humphrey was working at Stanford Research Institute and led a research project to help companies identify and solve performance issues. His work focused on understanding why corporate planning failed, and from that research, the SWOT framework was created. So the idea here is to kind of self-identify what are your top strengths. So your strengths, this is what you do really well. This is what you want people to think of you in regards towards. This could be, oh, I'm a great 2D animator. It could be a great public speaker. I'm very organized. It's just like whatever your top strengths are. It's also important to recognize what your top weaknesses are. So where are you fundamentally need to work on? Like, well, maybe I'm a really great creative, but I'm not the most organized. Or I want to be better at 3D, I'm not. So writing down your weaknesses. Then you got top opportunities. This is where you're starting to think a little bit of like the future. Okay, where do I see opportunity in the future for my skill set to be in more demand? What do I see coming? Could it be motion branding? Maybe all these companies now are trying to figure out, gosh, how do we bring motion to life? Maybe it's interactive. I mean, we've seen this rise and rive, nice, rise and rive. Maybe there's an opportunity there. And then I think it's also important to recognize the threats. What is out there that could be problematic for you? Is it the rise of AI? Is it more competition, supply and demand issues? But this kind of helps set a framework for what you're either up against, what you're doing well, and what you need to work on. So I'm going to give you 5 minutes to fill that out, and then we can talk a little bit about it. I really believe it's important, even if you don't know exactly what your final destination is going to be, that you start running the right direction. And how the heck do you start running the right direction? To me, I think it's asking yourself some core questions. I started my company or my freelance journey because what? Why did you do that? Why did you start for that? Did you do it out of necessity? I mean, that's okay, but now you can have an opportunity to think about where you want to be. Do I want more control over my life? Do I want more time back? Do I want to be able to take those vacations that I want to do? Do I want to stay up all night? Do I want to work at night? I mean, that can be it too. But coming up with your reason on why you started it just helps ground you and why you say yes or no to work that comes in. Does it match up with that? I do my best work when blank. So I think understanding when you work best. Ideal budgets and timelines. What's your goal? Where do you want to be? I think all of us want to be doing bigger and better things. Ground ourselves by writing that down. I'm most fulfilled working on these types of projects. This is a slippery slope because we have all done projects. I bet. Who was the one they didn't like, but they just did it anyway because they were getting paid? Brutal. This is the worst, but we have to do it. But understanding where you're being fulfilled. You know, as creatives, we are so susceptible to burnout. It's so easy to fall into this place of feeling overwhelmed. And then at the same time, we'll look at all the work that we're doing and like, we don't like doing any of this work. And I get it. Scarcity mindset is real. You don't want to say no to something if it's coming back your way. You don't know what's around the corner. But it's so important, so critical to understand when you feel the most joy in this industry. When you get into that like flow state and you're just cranking away on animation and how fun that is. What type of animation is that? What type of work do you want to be doing? 1 year from today, I'd love to be doing blank. Thinking again, where you like to be positioned 1 year from today. What does that look like? And like I said, this can change, but 5 years from today, the company or my freelance should be doing X, Y, Z. What do I want to be doing at that point in time? Again, its goals can change, but it's getting you running in the right direction. And then it asks you for a little bit of clarity on how you're going to get there. To hit my 1 year goal, the accountability, that's what I was looking for. To hit my 1 year goal, I need to blank, and to hit my 5 year goal, I need to blank. This in conjunction, I think with that SWOT analysis, starts to kind of create a core understanding of like who you are, what you do well, and that allows you to kind of begin to move forward and define who you are for your value prop.
Yeah, and I think that the real interesting question to me is I'm most fulfilled working on these types of projects. As it relates to our portfolio, I think something we as creatives don't think through sometimes is we are displaying work that we don't want to get again, right? So we got this project, it was a big project, maybe we did some cool stuff, we put it on our website, and we're like, I hope nobody hires me for something like this. So you've got to be real intentional with how you're presenting yourself to the world. There's a web designer that uses the Showit platform, her name's Ariel. She talks about how one night she was up working on an HVAC website. She's like this real super creative gal. She's like, what the hell am I doing? And so the next day she took her, yeah, exactly. She took her entire portfolio off of her website and made just pet projects and put them up, and then slowly turned her industry to be towards the types of clients that she was hoping to get. So now she's doing like huge clients, $30,000, $40,000 jobs, full rebrands for stuff that she's really passionate about. So I think you've got to be really intentional, and that's why this personal analysis is so important.
Well, and it dovetails nicely to kind of what's well, trust your gut. That's important. Definitely trust your gut. Your gut says a lot, you know. So in addition to those things, trust what that says. But what I was going to say is your ideal customer, right? Because this relates to it as well. Who are you targeting? Who do you want to hire you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the main thing that you want to do when you're approaching your portfolio is think about it through the lens or through the eyes of the type of client you're hoping to be working with, right? And so you can't look at your portfolio as even a self-expression, right? Like there's this real fine line between design and business, right? Where there's one is for beauty, putting beauty out into the world. Another is also for putting beauty out into the world, but there has to be a paycheck also associated with it. And so you've got to be thinking through the person that I would love to be working with. What types of things would they like to see on my portfolio? How are they thinking? What types of questions do they have? And so really kind of the best way that I've found to discover this is just to kind of work through and let me go back, just to kind of work through and think specifically on different areas. And I brought this book up. This is a great book called Extreme Revenue Growth. So really when you're making your ideal customer avatar, a lot of us try to think of like 2, maybe 3 people. But this book talks about unless you're at $1 million of annual revenue, your ideal customer avatar should be one specific person. Just one. Right?
Why? Why just one? Because that feels like a lot. I'm sure there's people in here who be like, yeah, I do so much. How do I distill that down to like one person?
Right. And that's the fear, right? Like if I bring it down to just one person, I'm alienating all this other business. But there's this really beautiful thing that happens, Mac, when you get real specific on who you're targeting. It doesn't alienate other people. It actually attracts them to you. Because you look like you have a real specific purpose, you've got it all together, and so it does the opposite thing that you would think that it does. So when you try to speak to everybody, you end up speaking to nobody. But when you speak to one person, you end up speaking to everybody, right? It's this real weird thing, and we've all heard it before as creatives, you know, the riches are in the niches, or the reachies are in the niches, I don't know how.
The riches and the niches is something that I'll never forget from this day, and that I'm going to say forever.
Yeah. So getting specific about the type of niche down to the type of person that you're going to be having the conversation with, because an ideal customer avatar of like an agency owner is quite different than a freelance client, right? Who's got their own business, they've got their own purposes, they have their own fears and their anxieties and their worries. So how have you guys kind of defined this for Dash?
Well, it's really interesting. We actually just went through that process over the last couple of years. And you know, it's funny talking about you're scared to do that. We were too. We started as being a generalist studio. Oh, we can do a little bit of everything. That can be our niche. We can be generalists, right? But we quickly realized when you go back and you start looking at the data, when I say data, what I'm referring to is who is the person that's reaching out to you? Like if you go back and you look at your project requests that come in, how much information can you get out of that person who sent that project request? What's their gender? Where are they located? Approximately their age? What industry are they in? How would you segment that out? And what you start to realize is when you pull together and take the time to piece together that puzzle, a picture starts to come out. I thought we were generalists. I just thought like, gosh, we do so much work for everybody, all different groups. But then we started looking at it, what we realized is the people that thrive working with us are complex industries. They have a hard time articulating what it is they do. They come to us to simplify that message and distribute it to a broader community. And so I just didn't realize that right away until you look and break it down. So a suggestion from my side is to like, no, it can be daunting. If you're a freelancer and you've been doing it for like 10 years, you've never done this process, you're like, am I gonna go through all 10 years of data? That's crazy. But you can look at the last couple of years, start a spreadsheet, write some of these things down, and then start just analyzing, asking yourself, you know, who is this person that's hiring me? What are they looking for? Even the briefs themselves, this was huge for our success, is starting to stitch together the common ask that we were getting from the brief that came in. All of a sudden, what was the classic explainer video, I'm realizing, gosh, people are asking for hype videos. They're asking for conference material. I didn't even think we did that much conference material. And then we started paying attention to it, and so much of the last year and a half has been assets for that. And so that's where it starts to get a little tricky, but you can play with the data. You don't always have to pick the thing that is coming to you most, especially going back to some of those documents we had up there, if it's not what you want to be doing, which I think is key.
Yeah, and I think so there's a lot of folks who are kind of in the beginning stages of their business. So I like to boil it down to kind of 3 areas when you're thinking about the niche that you're gonna get specifically honed in on. So one, there's skill. Like what skill do you have? What are those strengths that you put in that worksheet that you feel like really sets you apart? And then there's opportunities, right? Like not opportunities like what could possibly happen, but what types of clients have you seen that you're getting consistently? So Mac started seeing like, oh, hey, our opportunities are mainly in this section or this industry. And then finally is passion. What are you really passionate about, right? Because you don't want to pick an ideal customer avatar that you hate working for, because that's not going to last very long, right? So it's skills, opportunities, and passion, and the intersection of that is really where you want to kind of dial in. But really, I like to split it up into a few things. So when you're listing it all out, there's personal info. So general ideas about what the types of things are that they like, down to what brands do they like to purchase from, what music do they like listening to, what restaurants do they like going to eat at, what does that say about how they like to think of themselves. Then finally, some business info. What's the annual income that their business is bringing in? And this is an important question, because if you're trying to get X amount of dollars per project, say you would love to be in the $5,000 to $10,000 range, but you have somebody whose business is in the $70,000 to $100,000 profit range, that's going to be a big chunk of their profit, right? And so you've got to be thinking like, who am I going after as far as that's concerned? And then the main thing that's more psychology are motivations and anxieties. So, and this is really where I see a lot of portfolios neglect. So they talk a lot about the features of what they do, but in the SaaS space where I kind of live, we say that features don't sell, right? It's the transformation that does. So you want to lead with transformation, and the transformation is the motivation that somebody would have, right? Like what gets them out of bed. They don't want motion design. Like think about that. Nobody actually wants motion design. Just like nobody wants to own a hammer to have a hammer, right? Like unless any hammer collectors here, just gotta, you guys are looking at me like I'm weird, like maybe I got this. No, you want the hammer for what it does, right? You want to build something, you want to hang a picture to see people that you've taken pictures of so you can realize that you're loved when you walk into your home and you see decorations on the wall, right? Like that's the motivation that somebody has. And you also want to talk about anxieties. Like what are the fears that they would have about paying you to do what you're doing for them? So is this going to be something that actually helps me to get where I'm trying to go, right? And so speak to that. Or maybe they've been burned by freelancers in the past. You know, like happens a lot in the freelance space. Like I've had so many clients come to me and say, I gave this guy X amount of money, then he did like maybe half of what we asked him to do, and then I never heard from him again. Can you help us, right? And so if you speak to that, right, like rather than leave the elephant in the room and never talk about it on your portfolio or on your website, right? Like it gives that much more trust with the person that's considering hiring you.
Well, one thing I was going to say, just to bring it back to like the freelance space, is like I know at a high level it's like, all right, well that seems like a studio or an agency trying to win clients, but it can still be for you as a freelancer trying to work with a studio or agency. You know, if we're taking Maddie's example earlier and talking about, you know, the scientific community, you know, when someone like myself reaches out to a freelancer, typically there's a few things going on. One, we are overworked and overburdened. I have a lot on my plate, and so that is stressful. And I'm looking for someone to help take that burden off. And what I really want is someone that I can trust. That I'm like, gosh, you know, they're just gonna take this, they're gonna do a solid. The fear is always that it's not gonna be where I want it to be and it causes more work. So anyone that can navigate the ambiguity, I can give them a little bit of stuff to kind of run with. That's what I'm thinking when I'm hiring now. I just want someone that's easy to work with. I want good quality. I want someone that I can depend on that's there and that I enjoy being around. So if I'm a studio or agency that does a ton of scientific work, and I'm doing a ton of stuff for the scientific community, and we take Maddie's example earlier, and I have options of freelancers to choose, and Maddie's reaching out, and the way she reaches out talks about, oh, you know, I have the scientific methodology in my approach. I'm really clear and understand the detail and nuance that your clients are navigating. That to me says like there's going to be less changes and less hurdles in working with this person because they understand who we're trying to serve. So it can happen on a micro level, even though some of this stuff still feels like it might be like for like you trying to win a client. Think it through the lens of the studios that you're working for. Does your work reflect the clientele that they're working with, you know? And you can usually grab that by looking on on their sites and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think the beautiful thing about the ideal customer avatar is it is agnostic to any type of business that you would be working with. Because at the end of the day, we're all just people, right? Like the individual client that you're trying to build something for is the same as an agency that you're hopping on to help with a project, right? So everybody has fears, everybody has motivations. And so when you know who that person is, you can speak to those things specifically.
I mean, the truth of the matter, and we'll talk about it here in a second with just portfolios in general, I got a couple we can go through, is when we are looking to hire a freelancer or a W-2 staff member, the way that the hiring process goes, this sounds so cutthroat to say out loud, but like, if we have 200 applications that come in, I need to get that list down to 50 applications, right? So the very first thing I do, no joke, I'll go to the website, I'll pull it up, I'll look at your thumbnails, and I'll say, does this even fit with the vibe of who we are? That's how quickly it happens. I look at your thumbnails, does it fit with the vibe? If it does, now I'm looking at your reel and I'm checking out the motion. And with looking at the motion, I'm like, first 30 seconds, that's a good bit. So then you qualify them there. Now I'm going into your project and I'm asking, what are the details that you're giving me? Do I understand how you made this project, the process, your thinking? Kind of goes back to that like ambiguity stuff we were talking about earlier. How are you a design thinker? How are you going through all this stuff? Can you show me that? From there, then it's like, what is your cover letter or what was your submission? This is more for W-2 staff at this point, but it just kind of shows like the order of operations. So I think, to your point, Evan, you're right. A lot of it when you're really busy, it comes down to just work, but I do think when you're bringing on someone new full-time or a new freelancer, some of the nuance does kind of help with that. All right, let's get into marketing, Chris.
Cool. So Google did a study a while ago, and it's been a long time, and it's been debated, but I think it brought up some really good points. And they came out with something called the 7-11-4 rule. What this basically means is that in order for somebody to hire you, to purchase, to sign up, to do whatever, there has to be at least 7 touch points. So 7 forms of interaction with you or your content over 11 hours of time across 4 different platforms. So it might sound overwhelming. We're gonna unpack it a little bit to where it doesn't feel like, oh my God, I'm never gonna sleep, right? So think about what that means for the people that are considering saying yes to you in whatever capacity, right? So number 1, are there 7 opportunities for somebody to actually interact with you, right? Like, do you have 7 places for them to go or 7 types of interactions? It doesn't mean that there have to be 7 different types of interactions. Like maybe it can be repeated a few times across 4.
What is like an interaction that you're talking to or alluding to? Like?
So it would be like a visit to your website and then a quick check on your Vimeo, a phone call, an email, some type of engagement with you in some capacity, right? And then across 4 different platforms. So this is a big one for a lot of creatives, especially in the online space. Really, you don't own any online space that there is. Like there's not one that's like, yes, this is all yours. But there's one space where you own way more, you have way more say than any other, and that's your own website, right? Where you get to control how it looks, you get to control the experience that somebody has as they're navigating through it. But if you're only putting your stuff on Instagram or Vimeo or YouTube, right, you are subject to the algorithm in a drastic way, right? And so, God forbid, Instagram goes down, which it does all the time, right? And then all of a sudden, you're up a creek, right? Or who knows 10 years from now what it's gonna look like.
Yeah, or the platform changes and shifts so dramatically that what you were doing isn't getting picked up anymore, right?
Exactly. So I like to think of it as you wanna have a portfolio of platforms. So, and you really want to diversify the amount of platforms that you're on. And that's not to say that you have to be everywhere all the time. Think of it like having a home base, right? So you have a home base that everywhere you're trying to point people to is like, hey, go check out my website. Hey, sign up for this or whatever. And then you have little touch points or, you know, different places that you would send people to or maybe point people back to that home base. so that you can have the opportunity to have different types of interactions. I'm curious as to what Dash does and if you guys are on lots of platforms.
Well, so interesting. I had not heard of the 7-11-4 rule, but in my role over the last couple of years, I've taken over more business development for the studio, and it really echoes that same sentiment. Interesting statistic the other day that we have the most generations in the workforce than we've ever had before. We have 4 generations. There's the baby boomers who are still working, Gen X, millennials, and now Gen Z are becoming in decision-making roles. So you think about all the channels you have, all the particular places that these audience members could be, that's just so much that has to be tailored towards all these different individuals, which goes back and echoes some of the things that you were talking about earlier on like who your client persona is. If you can say that my client lives in New York, is typically in her 40s and works in this industry, that helps shape what channels you might want to go and activate on. Our process is similar to this with multiple touch points. We're active on multiple channels, and when I think about what has been successful for us on a business development standpoint, it's so hard to break in to meet anybody new this day and age, because the reality is we are all inundated with so much stuff, just so much stuff constantly. So much of our success I found has been with in-person interactions. You ground yourself with that first touch point by going to a conference, making a friend or acquaintance or talking to them, following up then for us on like LinkedIn, then it opens the channel where we've been more friends now, we're liking each other's stuff, mainly me liking their stuff, but that's okay. Then you get into emails, but emails is so far down the road once you've kind of established that sort of connection. If you're shooting off cold emails, the reality is that no one's checking them. You have to kind of warm some of these folks up in different ways. So again, it's like, how do I stay active on social, liking their content? How do I check in, which is not rude, but now I have this relationship going to in-person events. So it kind of follows some of these same 7 touch points.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that leads us to kind of the next concept, which this is something big in the marketing world, of like bringing people through a funnel, right? So not thinking necessarily so much as point A and point B, right? Like where you meet somebody and then they hire you, but thinking about the process that you're kind of taking people through. So starting out with awareness, like how do they know that you even exist, right? Did they meet you in person somewhere, which is a fantastic way. Like network marketing, I still feel like is one of the best ways to interact and meet people. Doing things like this. We have a web designer who goes to 14 different networking events a month.
I'm tired already. 2 workshops in and I'm tired.
And here's the crazy thing. She is one of the most, like you wouldn't look at her and go, oh yeah, you're a creative person. You'd be like, who are you? Like she's this quirky gal, but her success is crazy. Like she has so many clients just on retainers, not even new business. She's sustaining herself with the monthly recurring revenue that her company has. She does none of the work. She has a team of people. She just goes out and meets people all the time. She's introverted, right? Like this is crazy. It's so nuts. Like it all depends on you saying like, okay, this is how I'm going to make people aware, and then the interactions that you have as you go. So awareness could come from personal interactions. It could come from somebody seeing your reel randomly on Instagram. It could come through Google My Business. It could come through email, whatever.
But it's that relationship first that feels like so critical. It's someone introducing you to a client. It's meeting them in person. Of course, you have to be talented. If you're not talented, you won't land the job, but the doors get open because of the people that you meet. And I'll even come back to like our industry. I've had so many opportunities open up just from networking and hanging out with people who are peers of mine. It doesn't have to be like a marketer that's bringing you work. It could be an overbooked freelancer in this room who wants to do their client a solid and you a solid because they have the relationship. So you build that relationship, they build that trust, then they go to your website and you see the great work that you have.
Yeah, and that's really the next question that somebody has whenever there's an awareness of you. So you've been introduced, or maybe you've met somebody. And then the second question is, okay, how do I see what you've done, right? So that's where they become interested. So this is your online platforms. This is where they get to see your work and process. So after that, they begin to go to consideration. And this is really where you want to try to get people to say yes or no. The worst thing that can happen when somebody considers you is for them to say maybe, right? Like, you don't want them to walk away thinking, could be good, could be not. And this is where it gets really important to really explain who you are and talk about that value proposition, that onlyness, right? So that somebody can go, yes, this person is for me, or no, this person actually isn't for me. Then after that, we go into decisions where you're kind of helping them process the follow-up of that consideration. And so this is where I've seen a lot of freelancers or even creative businesses kind of drop the ball, right? They become aware of a client, or a client becomes aware of them, and then they get interested, and then they consider them, they send them a proposal, and then they just never follow up. Or maybe they follow up half-heartedly, or maybe like one time, like, hey, just checking in.
Or you send that email, just checking in. Has anyone ever sent the just checking in email? Hey, just want to follow up, just want to check in on that. Look, I have done that too. It's tricky, but you're right. What is the nurturing ability that you have? How are you doing that? Whether it's like email, sending emails, of course, but like newsletters or things like that? Yeah,
absolutely. So this is where it gets pretty creative, and you have a lot of say in what happens. First and foremost, you always want to be intentional, right? So if your first go-to is, hey, just checking in, right? That doesn't feel super intentional, and it doesn't set you apart. So it doesn't help them across the consideration process, right? Because we're hopefully moving them more and more and more towards the next step, which is action. And so as they're making a decision, the question you want to ask is, how can I get them to inch a little bit closer to a yes, right? And so, hey, just following up doesn't really do that. So some ways that you do it are you're intentional about how you're following up with them, right? You're calling out specific things. You know, hey, I just saw that you went and saw this theater or this show, and how was that? And then you can say, also just wanted to check in, right? But there's an intentionality to it.
What I have found, because I have sent every type of email there is, when you get all right, here's the quote, I put it out, we're good to go, and then there's crickets, and then you're like, hey, following up or whatever to see if you have any questions, and there's still crickets. And then it's like, God, do I send them a third email? We've all felt that uncomfortability. What I have done is I ask myself, how can I share something that's adjacent to this project that they just might be interested in? So let's say you gave them 3 or 4 references for what this video could be. Could come along and say, I just found these other animations, or we just worked on this piece. It reminded me of you and what we're working on. Let me know what you think. Just a way to open the door to more of that conversation. Or to your point, talking about an event on theater you see on LinkedIn, maybe if it's a corporate entity, you saw some big announcement they're doing. Love that this happened. Something that reminded me of is you could do X, Y, Z in the future if you want to build up like stuff to that. Again, it's the ambiguity. No one's asked you to create content or videos for this specific need, but you're kind of projecting ahead to saying, getting ahead, like I'm with you, I'm with your goals and where we're going to the future. You don't have to ask me to think about that. I'm already thinking about that as your partner. This would be a good solution. And it just feels so much more natural to be a helper like that than to be wanting and needing and saying like, hey, are we ready for this project?
Yeah, and I think something that someone once told me that has always stuck with me is, if you want to get the type of work you've never gotten before, you've got to be willing to do the types of things you've never done before, right? And so if you're ready to level up or get into a new industry, you've got to be willing to do some stuff that's pretty out of the box. I'm not talking about stuff that would be a moral failure, of course, like don't do anything like that. But, like one of the things that I did as a web designer is I would send like legitimately handwritten thank you letters. I would find people's actual mailing addresses and I would send them a follow-up thank you letter. I can't tell you how many times business owners would reach out to me and say, in 10, 20 years of doing business, nobody has ever sent me a thank you.
I love that.
Hey, I want to hire you for this next project, right? So think about that, like.
It could be something as simple like we do asynchronous recordings with all our statements of work. Statement of work. simple document, outlining costs, whatever. I'll record myself on something like Riverside and say like, hey, just wanted to walk you through the SOW, just make sure we're on the same page, really excited about this project. I walk through a couple of things, button it up. Now there's not like, hey, let's schedule a call to get on at the same time. They can watch it on their own time, but it feels more personal. It's like, hey, Sarah, really excited to work on this project. The team and I are just really pumped to jump in, have a lot of ideas. Here's what we're thinking about this stuff. You can convey it. So again, it's whatever fits for you. The notes might be a great way. If you're comfortable on camera, it could be a voice memo that goes along with it. I mean, anything that works well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is you're trying to stay top of mind without necessarily like putting the pressure on. Because think about this from the client's perspective. Like they feel probably bad that they haven't gotten back to you, right? And they know that they should, but they have.
They would feel worse.
We doing this or not? So try to stay top of mind, yes. But at the same time, don't necessarily make them feel worse than they already feel.
We are coming up on time. Let's see what we got in here. Optimizing your portfolio. Just going to hit. We're not going to watch reels and stuff. Sorry, but reel checklist. Keep it short. Best work first. Simple intros. No filler. Responsibility. It's always good to know what you did. I think that's a really big piece. Everyone get a picture? Nice. On your website, some key takeaways. I had their team pull together some examples on stuff they really liked, and I went through some of these reels, and we're going to talk about them, but we just won't now. This is key. Navigation should be simple. Show and tell. I want to see the great work you did. I want to see how you did it. I want to navigate the ambiguity. I want to see you as a critical thinker. How are you getting to these places? And give me some personality, Chris. I want to see who you are. Whether that's an about page, that's fine. If it's a video of yourself, whatever, it's your side illustrations, it's your play page that shows stuff you do on the side. Just the more you can get across who you are in an authentic way, that's what people want. It's not just about being buttoned up with great work, it's about being buttoned up with great work and being unique to who you are. Contact information, shouldn't have to hunt for that, and look professional. I think it's important that like your website look buttoned up. It doesn't have to be brand new and inventive. It can just be standard, but just looking professional is really key. What else we got? Oh, that was it. Great. Perfect. We have like a couple of minutes. Does anyone have any questions? Did anything spark interest you want to talk about? Yes, one back over here. Oh, nice.
I can wait for it.
Run, Chris. People are hungry. No, just kidding.
So with like the criteria that you've laid out for what makes a great portfolio, if you only have like, let's say 2 or 3 pieces that fit that criteria, is it better to whittle down your portfolio to hit all those points rather than just put out a breadth of work just for the sake of having more work to show off?
Yes, 100%. Brevity is important just in general, and quality over quantity. If you're struggling with that, the way that I would navigate it is find your value prop, what you want to be doing, have your select amount of works that focus on that, but then add like creative explorations or play page and cherry pick some of those favorite projects or scenes from those projects you can just share there. There's no harm in showing the great work that you can do, but when it comes to being pointed and winning work that you want to do, that's where the brevity and focus is important. Great question.
Yeah, and I'd also say, when you're just getting started, obviously you gotta work with what you got. You know what I mean? And so there's steps and stair steps to this. And so as you create stuff that is more in line with where you want to go, you take something out and you replace it with something.
Perfect. One question, we got one more.
Yeah, basically following up on that. So like when you're looking at how you want to pivot and you want to add in maybe like a personal project, how do you balance that? Let's say I have 2 solid projects that are done for clients that look good. Do you put in a third one that's a personal project? Like how much, I don't know, I see a lot of debate over should you include personal projects, should you not, that kind of stuff. Because of the restrictions with like clients now.
Sure, yeah. I think my stance would be if it's coming from a client facing, so like if it's a third-party client that's hiring you, they're owning their business, they're hiring you directly to do the motion for them. They don't know, like they're not gonna know if it's a personal project or not. If it's an agency, they might.
That's where I'm wondering. Like, do you think agencies or like in-house creative directors really care?
No, 100% not. I 100% just want to see the quality of your work and what you can do. I think like if, I I keep going back to Maddie's example just because we talked about at the beginning, but if you're in the scientific space and you don't have enough science-based animations, little personal projects that reflect that is amazing. At the end of the day, it's all about quality, your personality, and what you bring to the table. It doesn't matter if I don't know if we have any students in here, I don't care if it's student artwork, it's something you did after school, or it's client-based work. It's just important to show what you're really good at and what you can do.